Welcome to Southern Sense Talk on Rumble. You are going to love Annie the Radio Chick-A-Dee Ubelis and her co-host, C.S. Bennett. You'll find them live here on Fridays from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Date Time. Check out their website at Southern Sense, as in commonsense.net. It's that easy, southernsense.net. So sit back and relax. They're informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey.
Well, welcome to another adventure here. Oh, we got a little echo on your end, Hannah.
Do we?
Yeah. All right, we're going to just pause Hannah's mic for just a second. Welcome to another episode here on Southern Sense. I am your host, Annie Ubelis. And today we have a guest co-host, Hannah Davis from the Federation for American Immigration Reform, known as FairUS.org. Let's try to unmute you and see if we can get this correct. Oh, you got to unmute on your end. Okay. And we'll get this together, folks. This is live. Uh-oh. And last minute, okay.
We good?
Mark Tapscott just texted me just now. He was supposed to be with us for the first half of the show, and he is in a medical appointment that's taking longer than expected. So Mark will not be with us. So it's you and me, Hannah.
And then there were two.
Oh, man. We also have joining us, we were scheduled for former Congressman Ted Yoho, who has a new podcast out, but he had to drop out for a last-minute meeting last night. So we were scrambling. We do have our friend Josh Bernstein, and he has his own podcast. He was formerly with Breitbart Media, among others. I forget half the places. He's also spokesman for AMAC. He has a new book out called Preserving Liberty. So he'll be joining us in a little bit. So we have a lot to talk about, a lot to do. But Hannah, oh my goodness, the stuff that's hitting the news. And you and I were just talking just before coming on air that, you know, we have our borders, even though Trump has secured them, they're trying to find new and creative ways in which to cross. And just yesterday, they pulled this guy off of one of these surfboards, bungee boards, whatever you want to call them. And he had it strapped on the back of a big metal case that looked military in style to me. And guess what? He was a Chinese national off the coast of the Bahamas trying to make his way, paddle his way to the United States. I mean,
yeah,
the stuff just keeps on coming, coming.
Border Patrol agents have said that people are trying to find these different ways to come in and smuggle themselves in. You know, now that catch and release is done, they know that if they're encountered, they're not just going to be let go. So they've got to come up with these new ways. And I bet they're going to get crazier as the days go by.
Yeah. And, you know, the number one border where we're getting fentanyl and cocaine coming over is no longer the southern border. It's now the Canadian border. And, you know, Trump did the tariff war. He says, if you're not going to control the border, I'm going to impose a 25% tax. Well, the president of Mexico, I cannot pronounce her name. It doesn't even sound like she's Mexican. Schulman or something like that of Mexico. Within a matter of hours, she capitulated and said, oh, yeah, we're going to send 10,000 of our troops over to the Mexican border and we'll honor stay in Mexico.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Amazing, amazing.
Trump's been putting the hammer down on these, we call them recalcitrant countries, the countries that don't want to take their people back, or the people who tend to aid and abet the migrants coming in through their countries. And I think it was Secretary of State, newly Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Recently, he basically went back and forth with El Salvador and reinstated some third country agreements to where basically, you know, if you're going to be coming into the nation claiming asylum, you can do it in El Salvador, because why go through multiple countries to get to the U.S. to claim asylum if you're truly fleeing from something? So that's something we've seen. And then, the pressure on these countries. I think it was the Colombia the flights, they were like, no, we're not taking them. We're not taking them. And then Trump was like, fine, well, we won't let the U.S. Embassy in Colombia issue any visas. We'll make sure your Colombian president and all the cabinets, the higher officials, your visas will be paused. We'll put tariffs on you. And then they quickly changed their tune. So they received a bunch of their people. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we're doing, and tariffs is, I think that's the way. If you control the purse, we'll see some people starting to comply with what we want.
Well, before we get too far into the weeds, our viewers know and listeners know that we do start off each and every show with a dedication to a fallen hero. And to also let you know that if you're watching, you can watch on our homepage, which is southernsense.net, but we're also live simulcasting up on Facebook, LinkedIn, 2 channels on YouTube, up on X. We're on Getter, and we are on Rumble. Blog Talk Radio has decided to discontinue their podcasting, so goodbye Blog Talk, and we're up on Buzzsprout. You can find this on Buzzsprout also. So today's dedication is going to go out to Border Patrol agent Border Patrol agent David Christopher Maland of the United States Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection. His end of watch was Monday, January 20th of 2025. And this is his dedication.
Northern border federal authorities are investigating the murder of a Border Patrol agent in northern Vermont on Monday afternoon. And as reporter Kent Erdahl explains, we're also learning more about that agent who grew up right here in Minnesota.
Rena, 44-year-old David Chris Maland spent his career serving our country in the Air Force and the Border Patrol. And before that, he spent his childhood in Minnesota, growing up in Blue Earth, graduating from Fairmont High School. Today, one of his cousins, who's also a Republican state legislator, paid tribute to him on the floor of the Minnesota House.
I would just like to take a minute to tell you about a national tragedy that affects my family personally.
Representative Krista Knudsen asked for a moment of silence in honor of her cousin, U.S. Border Patrol agent David Chris Maland, who, according to the FBI, was shot and killed during a traffic stop on Interstate 91 in northern Vermont on Monday afternoon.
Chris is the first Border Patrol agent to be murdered in over a decade.
According to the FBI, during the traffic stop, there was an exchange of gunfire. Maland was struck and killed, and so was a German national in the country on what the FBI called a current visa. Another suspect was injured, taken into custody, and is being treated at a local hospital.
I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to Agent Maland's family, friends, and colleagues.
Vermont's governor and legislature also remembering Maland, who spent 9 years in the Air Force before joining the federal government and working both the southern and northern borders as an agent and canine handler.
Chris was a man of service. He was a U.S. Air Force veteran who worked security at the Pentagon during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Throughout his career, he was offered many opportunities for promotion, which he turned down because he wanted to be more focused on making a difference in the field and seeing the impact that he had each and every day. He died in the line of duty, serving to protect our country. We will cherish his memories and mourn his sacrifice. Until we meet again, Godspeed, you good and faithful servant.
And tragically, Agent Maland's family say that shortly before his death, he shared that he was also planning to propose to his longtime partner. Rena.
Incredibly sad. All right. Thank you, Kent.
Honoring the life and service of a fallen Border Patrol agent. Police from multiple agencies escorted the body of David Chris Maland from the hospital to the funeral home today. He was killed in the line of duty in northern Vermont this week. WMUR's Tom Garris is here with how he's being remembered.
Yeah, well, Monica, a somber day as hundreds of law enforcement officers took part in the procession. We'll take a look. The long line of cars from Vermont, New York State Police, County Police, Border Patrol, and more. It started at the University of Vermont Medical Center in Burlington, taking the 44-year-old's body to a funeral home. Maland was killed in the line of duty during a traffic stop on I-91 in Coventry, Vermont, earlier this week, according to the FBI. A German national is also dead. Another person is in custody. Now, Maland was a military veteran and worked at both the northern and southern border. The Vermont State Police corporal who led the procession talked about that ceremony.
It's the least we could do. I was honored to do it. Nothing can ever replace that loss, but we try to just show our support and love for our brother.
Now, tomorrow, another brigade will escort Maland from Burlington to Albany, New York, as he makes his way back to his home state of Minnesota. His family lives there. The FBI continues to investigate his killing. Jen?
Let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, we led with grace. Let it be seen, from sea to shining sea, beautiful America, living our legacy. Oh, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us be known as people of honor, humble and bold, faithful through fire. Let us hold firm to our convictions with wide open hearts, eager to listen. Oh, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us make room. Let us reimagine, welcoming voices with true compassion. Let's craft a world with hopes and dreams, challenges known, and those still unseen. Oh, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us be sure, when our time has come, we gave them hope, we made them strong. Let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, yeah, we led with grace. Oh, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul
Okay, we're back, and you're listening and watching to Southern Sense live at southernsense.net and everywhere else on the internet. Our guest co-host today is the one, the only, the magnificent Anna Davis with the Federation for American Immigration Reform, which is fairus.org. Oh, man. Formerly of Heritage Foundation. Can't forget that, too. I mean, FAIR kidnapped you.
They did. They did. It's a good fit.
It is. It is. It's a great fit. Matter of fact, it was a couple of years ago that I was up in D.C. doing the lobbying for HR2, which may have a second breath coming up, I see, coming up towards the end of this month.
Yeah, we're really excited. We've got a lobby day coming up late February. So this month, we're going to go up there to the Hill and tell them what's what, advise these congressmen, congresswomen that now that, the administration's changed, essentially a lot of the components of this bill are kind of already being put into place via executive order. So why not ratify it across the nation as well with a bill, a very good bill that I think everybody who has some common sense opinions about the border should get behind.
Absolutely. And we're going to probably do a whole big show just on that, the HR2 and some other project you've been working on for the last year. So we're definitely going to have you come back and be our exclusive guest for the show. If you can tolerate us for an hour.
I'd love to be on. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, one of the things I came across, and I'm constantly picking out articles and little things, is that Pam Bondi had did a halt to all funding for sanctuary cities, not just the distribution of the funds. I'm looking to see exactly how this is worded. It's also the sanctuary jurisdictions, so not just the cities, but any area that's saying that they're sanctuary, to pull the funding, to claw it back. They're also going to be doing auditing to see how much more of that money they can return back to the federal government, back to the taxpayer.
Yeah. Pam's the heat. She went straight for the guttural right there. I mean,
the juggler.
Yeah, the juggler. Yeah, there you go. So there's other things other than cities and counties. There's tiny little municipalities you would never expect to be sanctuary jurisdictions, but they are. And she's come hard. She's come hard on Mayor Adams. She's come down hard on him when it comes to sanctuary city policies. And New York City, the migrant crisis there is a $1 billion industry. It's so expensive, and it comes out of the taxpayer's pocket, and then it also comes from federal funding. I think what the Trump administration is doing is what he did it. He tried to do it last time too when he was in office, and he caught some flack for it. He caught some heat, but I think if it's done in a calculated way, we can kind of hone in on these sanctuary cities and make sure that they're not doing what they're not supposed to be doing, which is basically, abating and allowing the migrant crisis to continue to flourish. Because even if we have a closed border, and even if border crossings drop significantly, which they have, according to the new chief of CBP, we're still going to have illegal immigration. And so the last thing we need is for, cities and countries and even small towns in our nation to be complicit in that. It only incentivizes more illegal immigration. And I find it really ironic, Mayor Adams, for the past, because I think he's only been in office since like 2022, but even before he was the mayor, he was very much he loved these policies. New York City has the green light law. It gives everybody, regardless of citizenship status, access to driver's licenses. And with that comes a plethora of benefits, like Social Security and things like that, food stamps, I could go on and on, housing assistance. And so he was so big on these things. And then at the same time, doubling down and would give guidance, like policy guidance to not only his constituents and people who lived in the city, but city employees as well, on how to interact with ICE, on what detainers to accept and not accept, and how to limit their cooperation as a whole. And then all of a sudden, the pendulum swung, and he's all like, actually, and it's just kind of, no one likes a hypocritical squish. He looks like a squish on both sides of the aisle. The left think he's backtracking, and the right think he's just serving his own best interest. And
he is.
Yeah, and he's dug his city into a hole, this huge migrant crisis, and And I think if he was just open about it and came out and said, hey, I made the wrong choice. These former policies aren't good ones. I actually think this now. I think more people would be willing to extend the ladder to him to get out of that hole, but he's not going to do that. He's just going to continue to anger both people on different sides of the aisle and contradict himself as he speaks all the time. He's contradicting himself.
Well, as a former NYPD, I got some scuttlebutt, and he was known to be a political animal when he was a police officer. From the day he joined the academy onward, and everything was a calculated political move. And meanwhile, here he is. He's a police officer in this. He is an actual officer in the city of New York, and yet he became a state representative.
Yeah.
I mean, what side of the aisle are you standing on? And it became very obvious. And the fact that there was no separation between the two, to me, is very confusing. You're not supposed to moonlight unless it's approved, but obviously they approved to allow him to become a politician, which means that every move he's made has been a political calculation, and including to run for mayor of the very city he is a police officer in,
Yeah, seems like a conflict of interest. But I think Bondi, Pam, she did really well in Florida. She came down hard on drug trafficking and human trafficking. And I think she'll do that. She had a zero tolerance policy, and I think she's going to implement that same type of zero tolerance, mindset when it comes to immigration. She's got a bunch of executive orders that Trump signed that she's got to basically implement across the states. And it's nice to see, the pendulum swing, and she's going after New York City, Seattle, LA, things like that. So I think she'll do a great job with it.
Well, the funny thing is as I'm going through this article that Zachary Steiber wrote in the Epoch Times, Mark, we miss you. Under federal law, U.S. Code 1373, state and local government entities and officials may not prohibit or restrict agencies or officials from sending or receiving individual citizenship or immigration status. And one of the things New York City did when I was there, and is probably still doing, is that when you took someone into custody, not if you were transporting them for medical reason, for whatever, but when you had a criminal interaction with them and it results in an arrest and you're processing the person, we were not allowed to process and find out whether or not they were here legally. We knew that they were, but we could not put it in the paperwork.
Yeah. That's one of the first things sanctuary jurisdictions, by name or not, some places I consider a sanctuary, and they're not listed as one because they don't allow status inquiries. You can't even ask somebody their immigration status. And if you do know it, like you said, you're not allowed to put it down on paper, and you're not allowed to communicate with ICE. And that's inherently illegal. I mean, according to the Immigration and Nationality Act and all federal code. And it's interesting that these mayors and these massive cities, they're just derelict of duty when it comes to actually protecting their constituents, because they're protecting illegal aliens instead. And I think it's it's a good thing to see that some sanctuary cities are backtracking on their policies, like Mayor Adams is trying to, although New York City will always be a sanctuary city. I don't ever see that changing, regardless of who the mayor or what their opinion is on any other day. But then some are doubling down and reissuing and reaffirming their sanctuary status. So it's a hot topic right now. And it's a polarizing topic. And I just don't think that it needs to be. I think we should protect our American citizens and those people who have been, here lawfully, whether they were born here or they came here and sat in the line and did it the right way. But yeah, like you were saying, that was enacted, I think, back in like the 80s, no status inquiries. And then New York City just continued to double down on their sanctuary policies, especially when it comes to detainers.
Well, the good thing is that she has ordered the DOJ to investigate incidents involving obstruction of federal immigration operations and to bring charges if there were violations of the law. So that means all these political figures that thought they were getting themselves votes and constituents and everything and getting a hoorah, if you turned around and you supported these things by actively voting for illegal issues, illegal legislation or regulations or administrative code, if you did that, you are now obstructing a federal immigration operation. So I'm wondering how many of these people are going to walk away in handcuffs. They'll probably get slapped on the wrists, some fines, and told not to do this again and publicly shamed. I'd like to see some meat behind it, Like
Yeah.
what is it? The governor of New Jersey that publicly stated that he was harboring a female illegal immigrant in his own home.
Yeah. I don't think they'll be, and I was thinking when you were saying it, I would love to see these people being, hauled off, but I just highly doubt it. It'll be a slap on the wrist, and probably the worst thing will be maybe some loss of funds if they do it again within a certain amount of time, or probably just like you said, public humiliation, just public shaming. Putting them on this like blacklist. But no, I don't think there'll be. It's great that they're investigating, but I don't think there'll be a lot of teeth in it when it comes to people being hauled off. But it's still a first step, and from night and day from the last 4 years.
Well, you got to love Tom Homan, the new immigration czar. And oh my God, like a bull in a china shop. And what I love is he did an operation, I believe it was just in Chicago recently, a day or two ago, that and they notified the media ahead of time saying, well, if you want to come with your cameras and videotape what we're doing, come ahead. Well, one of these news media outlets, it turns out to be, I believe it was a TV station, sent word out. They leaked the fact this operation was going on ahead of time. Now, I'm sorry, that puts the lives of the enforcement officers in jeopardy. And any innocent that may be caught in between an illegal immigrant defending their supposed right to remain here and U.S. border enforcement enforcing the laws. It places people's lives in jeopardy.
Yeah. I'm aware of one that happened last week in Aurora. I wasn't privy to the one in Chicago. But yeah, I mean, I don't know who's leaking it. I'd say probably journalists. I venture also, if you notice the theme here between Chicago and Aurora is that they're both sanctuaries. So I'm sure it's the political pundits up there, or maybe even the police department themselves. Some of these police departments are woke as a joke. You'd never believe it. Well, I'm sure you would. I mean, you were in New York City. So hey, preaching to the choir here. But yeah, I mean, things like that. And to toot Tom's horn, he's, there's been over like 12,000 arrests already, which is crazy. But yeah, things that get thwarted like that, like in Aurora, it's a big security risk, because it could be something like this where, they just go in and they only get to arrest a couple when they thought they were going to get a whole, Venezuelan gang. And so they just leave. But it also could be, give it a couple months of that, and then, they walk in and it's a shootout because they were expecting you. We can't always just assume that these migrants are going to go the opposite way. They might stay and they might get violent, especially when the ICE operatives are going after violent criminal gang members. So they're not going to always, tuck their tails between their legs. They're going to bow up eventually, and it's going to hurt American citizens. It's going to hurt people in the neighborhoods and the ICE agents as well. Yeah, you're right.
And you got the governor of Massachusetts. Oh, woe is she that she was surprised that when they turned around, one of the people she gave sanctuary to was arrested with a lot of different types of drugs, including fentanyl, an AK, was an AK or an AR-15. I forget which weapon it was. But, shock, shock, shock. These people are actually criminals. They're drug dealers.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
But, back to Tom Homan, God bless him. He's encouraged the Trump administration, which they are supposed to be doing very soon, issue a program to allow immigrants to self-deport themselves.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a warning coming out within the next 9 days or so. And they're going to allow them to, if they do self-deport, they won't have a bar placed on them. Now, people don't understand what a bar is. You want to explain what that is?
Yeah, so self-deportation, if you deport yourself, they're not gonna keep you from coming back legally. They're not gonna keep you from coming back legally. It used to be, you'd self-deport and you had to wait a couple years and stuff like that. And I'm sure the Trump administration might end up putting some of those in place. But yeah, I mean, if you self-deport and you're a criminal illegal alien who was here and committed crimes here or were fleeing crimes you committed in Guatemala at one point, then no, you're not. Even if you self-deport, we're not going to let you back because we have heightened vetting processes now. But if you're an alien who came here, probably falsified your asylum claims, you're here purely for economic reasons, but you claimed asylum, which isn't allowed, and you self-deport, we're most likely going to let you come back through the right pathway, through the right avenue, and let you apply for citizenship eventually. We'll get you here on a visa that's appropriate for why you're here. Now, I'm not saying it's going to take it's not going to be expedited. I mean, our legal immigration still needs to be fixed, but we're so focused on illegal immigration. But yeah, that's basically the process, and it incentivizes people who are here who aren't bad people, you know, who just happen to come here illegally. I mean, they broke federal law, but other than that, they're not doing anything inherently bad. It gives those people a chance to kind of correct their wrong, and it also gives, you know, the government itself as an ICE and CBP time to focus on the criminal illegal aliens, because I mean, mass deportation is hard. It's a logistical nightmare. I mean, it's expensive. It requires a lot of manpower. So if we can, you know, knock down some of the weeds and get the people who aren't, you know, like I said, you know, criminal illegal aliens to just leave themselves and then give them a pathway in later on, it's going to be a lot quicker for everyone involved, you know, and especially, I mean, if we have to go and hunt you down basically and round you up in an ICE raid or an ICE sweep, I don't think that Trump would be very happy with that. Honestly, I don't think that ICE would. And if you're here and you're not a criminal illegal alien and we still have to hunt you down via an ICE raid, your chances of coming back in legally are going to dwindle. So it just makes the most sense. And the lines at the border going into Mexico have been very long because I think people are listening.
Yeah, because the bar, if they deport you, instead of you just self-deporting, the bar will be placed on you anywhere from 5 to 20 years, depending upon your case.
Yeah.
And as you said, if there's a criminal background on either side of the border, you know, kiss your sweet twitchy, you know what, kiss it goodbye. You're not coming back. But if you do self-deport, you don't have that 5-year waiting period. You start immediately going through the legal channels, and probably in a year or two, maybe 3, you're back.
Yeah.
But you're back here legally with a path to citizenship.
Yes.
And the other thing, and Trump this week submitted a notice to the Federal Register to remove protection against about 348,000 Venezuelans. The temporary protection status is now being removed. And what does that mean?
Yeah, temporary protected status is, well, what it's supposed to be, temporary for people who are fleeing like war-torn areas and stuff like that. It's not supposed to be long, obviously, because of the name. And what left-leaning presidents tend to do is extend a temporary protected recipient status, and so they can continue to stay. And you know, TPS, I mean, you get work authorization with that, and so you know they're working, they're here, it keeps getting extended. You know, they feel very entitled to where they're at, and it becomes a big hoopla. And so what Trump has done is basically taken away the extension and reissuing of temporary protected status for those who are from Venezuela. That's what he's focusing on right now. And I believe Pam, Miss Bondi, is going to have to be, she did something with that recently too, where because that was an executive order or a policy that came out of the White House, she has to implement it. And so they're working hand in hand with that. But yeah, it's getting it back to the state that it's supposed to be in, where it's supposed to be temporary, short term, and then you go back to where you need to go. Typically in places where there's war. He did the same thing when it came to the mass abuse of parole, you know, humanitarian parole with the CHNV program, the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan. So the Venezuelans are double dipping because they got TPS and they got the CHNV parole. So they can just come in so many ways that are under the Biden administration considered lawful, but they were inherently illegal because when he implemented them, he circumnavigated Congress. But that's another story for another day. But I can go on and on about that. But so not getting rid of TPS, but putting TPS back where it was supposed to be, coupled with him, you know, ending humanitarian parole, because the INA says parole is supposed to be on a case-by-case basis. And what Biden did was basically just give sweeping parole to these 4 nationalities. And so now those people are all kind of in legal limbo. I mean, you know, like we have like almost 500,000 of them here. And I can't imagine, had Trump not stopped those 2 policies, the abuse of those 2 policies, where we'd be. I mean, we can only take in so many people. And so, yeah, that's what he was doing with TPS and parole. So he hit the ground running for sure.
Well, you know, one of the times we had you on, the Biden administration had implemented this CBP One app.
Yeah.
And I remember when it was first issued, and we were going berserk. I
Yeah.
mean, here people can just go onto their phone, onto this app, make an appointment, cross the border, say I have an appointment, and still cross illegally. And yet the Biden administration made it look illegally, but it has gone dark. And not only that, all of the appointments that were made have been canceled. But how do we track the people who have the appointments canceled?
Yeah. I thought about that
Okay.
too when I saw the press release. I was like, where are they at? Because they can't check in anymore. But, when these people were checking in, we probably, they might not even been the people they claimed they were. We never saw them face to face. There was no proper vetting. So yeah, but the CBP One app is basically defunct now. I have heard rumor that it might be used for something else, something for people who are already applied and are here, like they're not here illegally. They weren't part of catch and release or anything like that, and they've already been vetted face to face. Had it's called a CFI, a credible fear interview. And so where someone says basically that they have a credible fear and that's why they're here claiming asylum. And so, yeah, the CBP One app was used basically it was completely riddled with fraud. And so I'm glad that it's gone. And it only further incentivized people who didn't want to show their faces, to try and claim asylum. And so I'm glad it's gone. It was a waste of resources. And if people want to enter this nation, they should do it in a way where they're vetted in person. And there's a credible reason for why they want to enter.
My little gray brain, this old lady here, I'm pulling something out of the back of my head because at one point there was an app, it might have been the original CBP app, where if you did apply to immigrate to the United States and you're not here yet, you could have gone on and checked to see what your status is. Am I remembering this correctly?
Yeah. So basically, the CBP One app kind of existed before it was abused, and so I think what they're trying to do is to kind of go back to that. Yeah.
So I'm not so dumb after all.
You got it. You still got it.
Oh man, I'm trying to remember now. The kids that were brought over when they were the DACAs.
DACA, yeah.
The DACA. All right. How is this all now going to affect them?
I don't think. I mean, and I've had this discussion, I think, with you before and with other people. But I mean, the average DACA recipient is older than me. I mean, they're in their mid to upper 30s, and they're probably here to stay. I mean, I know a judge at one point a couple years ago now, I think, tried to halt it. But it's just, I haven't seen Trump issuing anything regarding DACA. And it's something that is really hard to undo because when it was created by the Obama administration, they circumvented Congress. And so they just put it in, and it's like floated in the ether on these books. And like, we can't get the right, we can't, it's timing too. I don't think right now, politically, the optics, Trump already to his haters, I guess you could say, already looks like he's really, really hard on these migrants. The left love to tout these humanitarian reasons of why we should, have open borders and don't believe in borders. And so right now, people who don't like Trump really don't like him because of how he's going at things. And so, that's why, ICE and Tom Homan have said, we're not going towards the schools, we're not going towards the churches, or the hospitals. They will if they have to. That's a very last resort measure. They've tried to control the narrative and the optics. And so I think the last thing the administration needs to do, and I'm not trying to get political here, but is to focus on DACA, because DACA, the majority of DACA recipients, like I said, they're typically, average to high income earners. They've got degrees. They're well integrated into their communities. They have children, which could hinder things too, with birthright citizenship. So I just don't think, and I could be wrong because I am a lot, but I don't think it's the wise thing to do. And I don't think it's something that is on the top of mind right now. And it's also going to be very difficult.
Yeah. I mean, when I think back, when these kids were coming over, even in the mid 80s, early 90s, before Obama came into office, when Clinton was still there. A lot of these churches, and one of them, we got a burglary call to. We responded to the church, and sure enough, inside the offices, the safe was broken into. So we start to ask, what was in the safe? It was green cards.
Ah.
And as soon as that we found out, next thing I know, in comes the rector, and it's like, we're not making a report, closing the safe, ushering us out. So this is not something that's new. It's something that's been around for decades.
Yes.
There's always going to be someone trying to find a way around the system. And unfortunately, at that time, it was a lot of the churches. And a lot of the churches that ended up being the NGOs that supported the illegals coming over the border underneath the Biden administration.
Yes.
Even go back to the
right.
Yeah, even going back to the Obama administration, because I've been doing this now 15 years, and we were talking about it back then. But here, there's something, because DeSantis is now in the Trump cabinet, and now they're talking about maybe his wife running for the seat. So while he's not there, the Florida legislation passed an alternative immigration bill.
Yeah.
And this blew my mind. But before we go fully into it, we've got our friend Josh, who just popped into the studio, and let's bring him on board.
Cool.
And welcome aboard to Josh Bernstein of the JBU Show, also the author of Preserving Liberty. Good afternoon, Josh, and thank you for popping in last minute.
Yes,
my panic text to you. Josh, I lost you. Come on in.
Great to be on the program with you once again.
Oh, man. Well, we were starting to talk about something that Florida has just done and passed alternative legislation, bypassing the governor's office. And believe it or not, they put it into an office. What the heck was it? Consumer Affairs or something? I'm looking for it in the email. It is some weird. I'm sorry. Agriculture Commissioner is now in charge of illegal immigration in Florida. Now, tell me how that works.
I don't exactly know. I mean, obviously, agriculture is farming, right? It's food. It's lots of that stuff, dairy, things like that. Perhaps maybe even FDA. I don't know. But immigrants, obviously illegal, have been working in the fields, for many, many years. I love Steve Bannon's quip against CNN, Jake Tapper, when he said, "You're not seriously, advocating illegal aliens, being exploited for work to handle our food supply now, are you?" I'm sure that's not what you're thinking, right? So I thought that was pretty clever. But look, I think the bottom line is we have to get as many of these criminal aliens out of the country right away. It is absolutely detestable and sickening to know that people are basically letting terrorists, right, Tren de Agua, letting them know beforehand that ICE is coming to get you. I mean, who does that? Who doesn't want a safe neighborhood? I mean, how can you be so bankrupt in your own soul to say, I don't care about the rest of humanity and my fellow Americans and their safety and security. I just am holding on so tight to my ideology that I don't care if you're a mass murderer or a rapist. I still want you in my country. I can't understand that, but all you have to do is look at the blueprint of that, which is Europe.
I watched after Trump started to do all these actions for protecting our nation from illegal immigration and illegal terrorists now on our soil. You watch some of these liberals just go on things like TikTok and Instagram and everything, crying and wailing. The latest one was Selena Gomez, an actress who is, I believe, 7th generation American. She has nothing to do with, and her family came here legally, by the way, doing a massive crying spree. And I'm looking at her and I'm going, I love the TV show Only Murders in the Building. And how could I watch it now with this going on?
It's pretty cringy.
I mean,
it is. Look, I've quoted a lot your guest on FAIR in my book, Preserving Liberty here.
Oh,
And
nice, Hannah.
yeah, I have quoted a lot in the chapter on immigration.
She's
We've got
blushing.
to stop dangling the carrot. That's really what we have to do. Once we stop dangling the carrot, then there won't be this, this push to be in the United States of America. We've got to get rid of birthright citizenship. It's going to go to the Supreme Court, and the key to that is in the jurisdiction thereof. How is that going to be implemented? How is that going to be discussed and argued? And I think that there is a basis here. I think the judges that put the temporary stop are absolutely wrong. And it was never meant for that intended purpose, to just wet foot, dry foot, just get here and have a baby and now you're a citizen. That's not what it was supposed to be intended for. It had to do with the family and the children of slaves and all that. So I think that they're going to have to look at that. They're going to have to go back to that. And I think we have to, do a lot of different things, not only build the wall on the southern border, but look, the Swanson section of Vermont is the largest in, the entire northern border. And here's the thing, we ought to shut down the Darien Gap as well, because why go to Colombia and then you have to traverse through the jungles of Panama, where you have drug traffickers and snakes and serpents and coyotes, and I don't mean the animals, and all these different types of people. Then you go through Central America, you go into Mexico, and then you get into the United States. Well, they're getting smart. They're getting a flight from Bogota directly into Canada, and guess what? Just walking straight across, just walking straight across. So we need, and I talk about it in my book, Preserving Liberty, available on Amazon. We need a northern border as well. And people say, well, that's so isolationist of you. Well, yeah, technically I am, because we have to protect ourselves, we have to protect our freedom, and we have to protect the integrity of our boundaries.
Well, people don't understand when they think about the border, they think about the southern border with the fences and the walls and everything else. But having grown up in New York, there is no physical border unless you're going through a major roadway. And then there's a toll. There's a lot of people that have their property in the United States and the Canadian neighbor. The boundary line is right there between two personal properties. Mm-hmm. There is no major wall on the northern border, which is why we were discussing earlier, most of the fentanyl and cocaine now coming through is from the northern border.
Yeah. And it seems like nobody even wants to talk about it. Nobody even discusses it. It's always what's going on in Arizona, California, New Mexico, and Texas. What's going on that southern border and the Rio Grande and all that. And the reality is that it's a hell of a lot easier and safer for these migrants to just take a flight, sadly, by our own taxpayer dollars, right? I talk about the 40-something airports, the secret airports, where they are. I list them all by name, every single one of them in the book. And I explain that this is treason. You are aiding and abetting an invasion into your country. This is U.S. Code 182381, which is treason. And these people that are doing this, and these NGOs and these Catholic charity organizations, they all need to be shut down. But more importantly, they need to be prosecuted so that we can set precedent so this never, ever happens again. But yeah, President Trump obviously has to fill in the gaps on the wall on the southern border. We've got to get rid of the lottery. The visa lottery is a disaster. We need to go to a merit-based society, not just because you had a baby here, you're automatically a citizen. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be changed. And of course, a lot of it is going to end up at the Supreme Court.
Well, I do a show on Wednesdays called Moms Across America. We discussed this also. And you mentioned the birthright citizenship. And as you stated, it was intended to give citizenship to the freed slaves. So
Correct.
When you're under the jurisdiction means that you are here legally, and either you're applying for citizenship or you have been granted citizenship. Therefore, you are under the jurisdiction of a citizen of the United States. And the perfect example is John McCain was born on a military base, but because his family was not within the United States, he still remains a U.S. citizen eligible to run for president, which he did, even though he was not born. Ted Cruz, another example, born of American citizen, even though they were in Canada at the time, who returned to the United States, he remained a U.S. citizen and ran for presidency. That's what it means. So if someone from Britain or Italy or South Africa come here, they still are under the jurisdiction of the country of their residence, unless
Correct.
they commit a criminal act. And only then would the criminal justice system's jurisdiction take precedent.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see a 5-4 decision, hopefully in favor of repealing this birthright citizenship. It could go 4-5 the other way. We don't know. Roberts is obviously, and Barrett. These are two pretty big liberals, sadly. Especially Barrett has really been disappointing. Roberts, we've kind of already known about him, but I guess we could go back to Barack Obama and the fact that he basically told him, look, if you don't pass Obamacare, this documentation is going to come out about your illegally adopted children from Ireland, which I covered way back when. But I digress. So I think that you're going to see a 5-4 decision either way. Hopefully it'll be in our favor, but I don't think it's going to be a 6-3 or a blowout in any direction.
Oh, Hannah, jump in, Hannah. You don't have to be so quiet.
Yeah, you're the immigration person. So.
No, but you got the nail. You nailed it on the head. I think anything to stop, we call them anchor babies, keeps people who are here illegally when they have these babies. It shields them from deportation. So yeah, I think it'll end up going to the Supreme Court. It has to, and I don't know when or how quickly, but I don't suspect it to be a blowout either. I think it'll take a long time. I think they'll be deliberating for a while actually, and it'll be close for sure.
Well, Tom Homan has been doing such a great job along with Kristi Noem. And Kristi Noem put out some figures just, I think, a day or two ago that over the last 2 weeks alone, illegal crossings have dropped 93%.
Yeah, look, Tom Homan's going to put out a memo in about the next 10 to 12 days. And he's basically going to let people know, like, look, if you're here illegally, we'll give you an opportunity to self-deport. If you don't, well, then you are banned from being here, even applying for, citizenship for at least 15 to 20 years. It's your choice. And I think the mass exodus will continue. It's already continued. There's been over 1 million people that have already left on their own recognizance already. And I think that number is going to continually increase.
Well, one of the things I started to ask you, Hannah, and it just went out the brain. No one's talking about the children that have disappeared. Over 320, 340, 350. We don't even know how many thousands have disappeared. But I was talking to my state attorney general just last week, and it seems that they are recovering these children. And somewhere I heard, I think he said 200,000 have been recovered. Is this true?
I'm not sure about the number, but I know some have been recovered, and it's going to fall under the preview of Pam Bondi. So she's got a bunch of executive orders to implement, some of which we talked about earlier. She's got Homeland Security Task Force for like each state to go about. Sanctuary money we spoke about. She's got the Health and Human Services trafficking. Yeah, that's a big one. Where are these kids? What are they doing? We already know, they've been sold into sex slavery or labor trafficking, things like that. And so they've got to go and hunt them down, for lack of a better term. I think we found some up north a while back now, working at like some meat processing plant. I'm sure that's where a lot of the boys are. And I hate to think about where the little girls are. And so it's just something like, it's going to take time. But no, I wasn't aware of those numbers at all. So that's something I'm going to have to look into. Yeah, I'll admit that I didn't know.
It's really heartbreaking because what do you do with these children now? You can't send them home, honestly, because they may not even have a home anymore.
Yeah, a lot of them, and that's, and Biden got rid of the DNA testing. We used to DNA test family units at the border, and that was something Trump was very, very into. It's something I hope that he reinstates, and I think there's talks to do that if he hasn't already done it. But like these kids, a lot of them came across alone. With coyotes, the smugglers and stuff like that. They just have like a little slip of paper in their pocket that said their name and where they came from. And then some of these kids came in these family units, and we'll never know. We'll never know if that was actually their uncle they were with or something like that. And so I think the best thing for them is either, deporting these children. If we can figure out, if there was a slight chance we can actually know for sure that that's her aunt back in Bogota, we can send her there. You know what I mean? But if we can't figure that out, they're probably going to have to go to the foster care system, which is already over swamped. And so, and then there's going to be a debate. Do we send them to a foster care system in America? Do we send them back to the country they're from, a foster care system there? So it's disgusting that it's gotten this far. It's horrible that it even happened. You know, the previous administration, every single one of them is derelict of duty. And so it's, as we find these kids, we're going to have to, there's going to be some talks about where to put them, what to do with them. And it's a shame that it even got this far.
For me personally, in my heart, I can't victimize them a second or third time.
Right.
Because first they were abandoned to be sent across the border alone. And then secondly, they've ended up wherever they have, whether it's the sex trade or slavery in factories. They would have to come into some sort of a system that would help them to recover and readjust. And I can't see being so cruel as to send them unless there is a family member that wants them, honestly, to return.
Yeah.
But they're going to need a lot of care.
Yeah.
And that's care that you can't just give in a day or two. That's going to take years.
Yeah. You know, we use these federal funds for sanctuary cities. If we're going to use any federal funds that go to a migrant, it should be the children. You know, they weren't, you know, they weren't complacent in this. You know what I mean? Like it's not their fault. And they were put in this position. And yeah, if we're going to do anything with our federal funding, it should go to that. And it's going to be tricky. It's going to be really hard to track these kids back to where they came from, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's really heartbreaking. And then how many criminal prosecutions will we have for the people that have trafficked them and then employed them in whatever services they wanted them to, the criminal aspect of that? It's going to be a massive scandal and breakup because the criminal gangs and activities and what it traces back to.
Yeah, look, I think, you know, they got to go after a lot of these Christian charities. They've got to go after these NGOs and these groups that have been bringing these people over. You know, the crazy lady that was talking about immigration during that one ceremony with President Trump sitting there, you know, it turns out she got $52 million from all these charities and organizations, which is why she's so pro-immigration, to kind of bring them into the United States. She had the audacity to chastise President Trump, you know, and it's so, again, there's so much of that. But this U.S. aid scandal, I mean, there's not enough yellow crime
That's
scene
what I just
tape.
picked up.
There's not enough yellow crime scene tape to wrap around Washington, D.C. right now. D.C. is a crime scene, plain and simple. And the best part about this is that when Elon Musk hired these young whippersnappers, these science nerds, as they're being called, he probably told them, look, I want you to look into everything, all the coding, all the emails, all the drop boxes, all the secret files, find it all. But before you do any of that, I want to make sure that you lock out the people that work in these agencies, their usernames, their passwords, their key codes, all of it, so that we can hold on to the evidence and the incriminating evidence of these crimes that obviously have been committed. So I think what's going to happen is Pam Bondi is going to be overwhelmed with who to prosecute first.
Yeah. And the funny thing is you're hearing cries from certain people about that Elon Musk is forming illegal acts by going into all these systems. He's cyber attacking everyone. He's a criminal. The House of Representatives wants to pull him forward on subpoenas for hearings and this and that. He's not an employee of the U.S. government. He has been contracted by the U.S. government on its behalf to wheedle out the malfeasance.
Yeah.
And the funny part is that people are screaming, well, you can't touch funding because spending must originate in Congress. Congress was intended to do spending to cap the executive office, to not let them go above whatever they gave him. And it's up to the executive office to make sure it is spent reasonably. So Trump is 100% in his right in saying, if we find out that money is misspent, if we find out we can trim a budget and save the taxpayer money and still perform the functions we need, that is the job of the executive branch. He does nothing illegal. And yet you hear the left going berserk.
And you know what else is interesting is that there is already legal precedent with a United States president, and that would be Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton cut 102,000 plus from the federal bureaucracy. Well, he gets credit for it. Let's face it, it was Newt Gingrich in the 1994 Republican Revolution and the contract with America. And I think Newt Gingrich had a conversation with Slick Willie and said, look, you have a choice. You can fight us and be a terrible president, or you can sign on to welfare reform, cutting taxes, cutting spending, cutting the federal bureaucracy. You can do all that stuff. We'll give you credit for it. And guess what? You can run around saying that you balanced the budget years from now. That's exactly what happened. And so also the bailouts, we were up to 60,000, right? It was 20,000, then it doubled the next day to 40,000, then another 20,000. So it tripled to 60,000. Bill Clinton did 70,000 in 1995. So there is already legal precedent here. You are allowed at the executive branch to cut the fat. You are allowed to do that. And as far as Elon Musk, they're screaming about all this. But here's the thing. This shouldn't be a shock to them. This is what they ran on. President Trump said, if you give me the opportunity to serve the country again, I will be sure to go through every single agency and find the fraud, find the waste, find the abuse, all of that. And I'll appoint Elon to do it. And Elon was jumping up and down saying, I can't wait to get my hands on the government. So where is the shock coming from? You know where the shock is coming from? A, there's crimes that have been committed that now they have evidence of. And B, they never thought that he would actually do it.
Yeah.
That's why they're upset.
It's like a rules for me, but not for thee attitude. I think they're also upset that they're cutting the fat when it comes to DEI. DEI is dying and they're cutting it down. And I think they're upset about that too. All these woke agendas that they have throughout the government and the left are screaming. They're screaming over it.
Yeah.
Well, when I was doing my research and I pulled this up, and this guy was from Laird Miner's Post, and he was talking about the Congress, the liberals in Congress screaming that what Trump is doing is not legal. And they're basing it upon the Impoundment Act of 1974. And I don't know, Josh, if you would go as far back as I do, but back then Nixon was cutting the budget. And they got so upset with him because he was cutting so much back. They passed this Impoundment Act to prevent the executive branch from doing its constitutional power. So they're trying to invoke that. So this is going to end up going into a fight and probably going up to the Supreme Court, which then will overturn the legality of the Impoundment Act.
Yeah, I would say so. And here's the other thing, these judges that are trying to stop this, look, Joe Biden ignored so many judges on mandates. He ignored judges that told him not to do these bailouts for student loans. He ignored them on, vaccines and all these other different things. He did it anyway. So here's what I would suggest. President Trump ought to just ignore this judge and say, you know what? Let's just deal with this from the outside. Okay, let's get rid of these people. Let's get them out. And if they want to fight for their jobs, they're going to do it from outside of Washington, D.C. They're not going to do it inside of Washington, D.C. Now, that is a more provocative, more controversial approach. But then again, that's why I'm one of the most censored people in this country.
Well, I don't know. I may have you beat in a couple places.
Have you been attacked by the entire country of China with 4,400 IP addresses at the same time?
No, but I've been
probably not.
I've been taken down 3 times when I was talking about the Uyghurs and
I cover the Uyghurs in the book.
And the Falun Gong. When I covered them, I'm about partially through the broadcast, and all of a sudden my entire system crashes. It's the only time my computer ever crashed, 3 times, when China we were talking about. And we had guests on testifying against it with fact, in-person information. So, yeah.
I go after Temu hardcore in the book. And I explain you can buy something on Temu for 75 to 80% less than you can get it anywhere else. Why? Because they're not paying any labor costs. It's all slave labor from the Northwest Zhejiang province. And that's where they are forcing these people to do all kinds of crazy things. Temu parent company was a company called Pinduoduo Holdings, and Pinduoduo Holdings has been held by our government for counterfeit operations as far as masks and medical supplies and clothing and purses and jewelry. I mean, you name it. I mean, they're on our list, our government list. And so a lot of those people also went to TikTok, and we know about TikTok and ByteDance and all that. And that's why I won't go on TikTok. A lot of people have said, TikTok is great for conservatives and you could build a bigger audience. Okay, fine. But I'm not going to talk about preserving liberty in the United States of America and be on a Chinese spyware program. So I got to stick to my guns on that. But hopefully TikTok will eventually have American control, or at least partial American control. And if they can do that, then I would consider going on it.
Well, the question would be, even though it's partial American control, whether or not China will still have a backdoor access.
Yeah,
and that's what I fear.
Another problem too.
So that's why I don't think I would ever go onto TikTok. I mean, I'm even careful on what I put onto Instagram. And I've been censored on Facebook. I had to go through my email list to figure out which one I could still use to sign into Facebook.
Yeah. Well, I'm still censored from Discus. You know what that is, right? That's that commenting service. I can't even use that. I can't comment on articles or anything. My name itself is so toxic that I've kind of rebranded myself using Preserving Liberty rather than Josh Bernstein. So it's been I've been in political purgatory for the last 4+ years. So let's see if I can get out of it.
Well, we started talking about DEI, and that is something that has been creeping across our nation under the Biden administration. It actually was even before that. Because I remember in the 1980s when I worked for American Express, they had this little things like, well, if you want to take a portion of your check and make a donation to these different organizations and charities, we'll help you do that, and we'll do it for you through your payroll. And they gave us a list of who they recommended. And out of a list of about 25, there were only 2 I would recognize as either Republican or conservative, or even conservative Christian in which to donate to. Yeah. And so I saw the corporate world already going that way in the 80s. And what it has done today is absolutely mind-boggling. But now Trump is in, DEI is dying, and you got places like Meta, Facebook, they're all abandoning it. And lo and behold, in the end zone of NFL, it's going to say, what is it, love something? Love each other or something like that.
They took it. See, they both sound kind of woke, but they took one thing away that sounded woker and replaced it with something that wasn't as woke, is what I'm trying. I read it as, and so I guess it's like the lesser of two evils or something.
And there's no kneeling for the national anthem.
Better not be. Yeah, exactly.
And have you seen the new Bud Light commercials?
Well, I think Bud Light is permanently damaged. They're not going to come. They're not going to come back, excuse me, from what they did. They can bring out Travis Kelce. They can bring out all these other people. They can try to put pretty women up there and things like that. But I think the damage has been done, from, what was her name? Dylan Mulvaney, I think her name was.
Mulvaney.
So, these companies need to learn their market, and then for everybody who's, there's some companies that are doubling down on their DEI policies. I think like Apple and Costco, Chase. Chase.
Yeah, well, look, we saw it in Lahaina 2.0, right, in California. DEI means death, extermination, and incineration, actually. And we saw it on full display in California. But, there's something about the California thing that people are not also looking at. And that is the fact that where did the water go? And where the water went was to Stuart and Linda Resnick. This is the Resnick multi-billionaires that own a company called The Wonderful Company. You may have heard of them. Wonderful Pistachios, Halos, Cuties, Fiji Water, Wonderful Pomegranate. In about 1994, they paid off with a lot of this, the Kern Water Authority, and they rerouted water to their organic farm for their business, which uses 150 billion gallons of water a year. That is triple what Los Angeles County uses. They own 57% of the entire state of California's water supply from their Kern Water Authority. So we ought to do an investigation, a special counsel investigation into California, because it's not just Bass and it's not just the DEI and it's not just Gruesome Newsom. It's also this family. And I think that a full investigation is warranted.
Well, I think also if we can get something like Doge into all the states.
Yeah.
And that way.
Let them go into the voter rolls.
There you go.
Put these kids in the voter rolls, drop an executive order creating the Department of Election Integrity, fill it with these young kids, these whippersnappers, these coders, these forensic experts and specialists. Let them go through all of them. And I would start with the 5 House races that were stolen in this election. I'd flip those. Then I would go to the 4 Senate races. We should be at 57 seats right now. We should not be happy at 53 seats. We should be at the 57 because they stole Kerry Lakes, they stole Sam Brown's, they stole Mike Rogers, and they stole Eric Hove in Wisconsin. So we need to get to the bottom of those. And then once we get to the bottom of those, then we go to 2022's midterms and we figure that out. And eventually we go to 2020 and perhaps nullify everything that's been done for the last 4 years. That would be good.
Yeah,
Wow.
States should be cleaning their voter rolls every 3 to 5 years at a minimum. I mean, I have a list of things I've compiled that states could be doing to, get rid of mass illegal immigration, at least, migrating in their states. And that's one of them, just clean your voter rolls, and if it's not a migrant you're going to find, if it's not someone illegal, it's someone dead, just clean your voter rolls.
We can wipe out 30 to 35% of our election integrity issues with 2 things. Number 1, mandate every single state has voter ID, right?
Yeah.
The Harris victories, if you want to call them that, were every single state that did not have voter ID with one exception, New Hampshire. Every state that had voter ID, President Trump won and won it handedly, right? So that would be number 1. The second thing is banning non-citizens from voting 100% in any level, state, local, or federal in our elections. If we do those 2 things alone, that's 30 to 35% of the problem.
And no motor voter. These states that do motor voter, most of the time they give driver's license to illegal aliens, and then they're signing up to vote at the same time they're getting issued their driver's license. So, yeah.
Yep.
Well, here in South Carolina, we did turn around and mandate voter ID.
Yes.
Which, that really cleaned up. We also changed the machines and how they're handled. And we also audit all the machines. And what I love is that what I love, people want paper ballots, but for us, you go to the screen, you touch it, you turn around, you decide who it is. It gives you a paper ballot with the printout, which then gets scanned. What gets married is they physically pull the paper ballot out. They're not looking at the barcode. They're not scanning the barcode on the bottom. They're looking at what the paper ballot print is saying and what the machine is printing out. And if they don't match, then we have a problem. And here in South Carolina, I think there were only 2 machines with problems in the entire state. So if we can get people to get machines such as that or go to paper ballots, we can enclose it. But the other thing is, in states that have open primaries like mine, we need to close the primaries. What is the purpose of having a party primary if you're allowing people that are not members of that party to vote into it?
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. Look, I talk about in my book, Preserving Liberty, one of the things that I talk about in it, particularly when it comes to elections, is that tyranny is sold as convenience. Oh, just touch this machine and just hit your thing and your vote will be counted, no problem. What? No, of course they're not plugged into the internet. How could you even think that is the possibility? And so tyranny is sold as convenience. We got to get rid of these machines. Just because we have the technology doesn't mean we have to use it. So we need to get rid of that. We need to get rid of early voting. We should not have election season. We should have election day. And no, it shouldn't be a holiday. A lot of people on the right think we should have an election holiday. I disagree with that. Here's the reasons why. You can go in the morning to vote before work. You have a 3-hour mandated federal law break between that you can't be fired on because you're allowed to vote on election day. And then when you get off work, the polls are typically open till 8 o'clock at night. So in my opinion, if you can't get there during the day, then it probably wasn't that important to you. The last thing I want is to have a quote unquote election holiday where the left is off, everybody's off, and everyone is flooding, that normally wouldn't vote, and they're being plied with cash and pizza and cigarettes and beer and who knows what else. We don't need any of that. So I want to see that eliminated as well. As far as mail-in balloting, I think that should only be for the military that is actually overseas, not just any military member here in the United States. And of course, for the indefinitely infirmed or confined, we should have exceptions for them. But that's it. Because like Rahm Emanuel once famously said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So we try to be nice and say, okay, we'll allow people to vote, from overseas and things like that to make it convenient for them because we don't want the military to miss out on their vote. And of course, the left sees that as an opportunity to say, oh, well, wait a minute, why don't we just let everybody vote for mail? That's how Wisconsin in particular was stolen, because they went to a left-leaning judge and they said, everybody, because of the mandate and the lockdown, is technically indefinitely confined. So because of the lockdown and the mandate, we want everyone to be able to vote by mail. And so that's how they bastardize these things. And so we got to get rid of mail-in voting. We've got to get rid of early voting. It's worked so well on election day for so long. Smaller precincts, paper ballots, at least one form of ID. I'll say it publicly. I've been chastised for it. You ought to have proof of income to vote. You got to show some skin in the game here. I'm not saying you got to be a landowner and all that, but I'm saying you should have some skin in the game. Because if you don't, who are you going to vote for? You're going to continue to vote for, likely, the people that are continuing to give you handouts.
I think Washington State is always been, for the longest time, mail-in ballots, right?
What's that?
Washington State's just mail-in ballots, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and look at Colorado, same thing, right? Yeah. Oregon, same thing. Republicans haven't won, statewide elections in years because of that.
Well, on early voting, I've always been against it, but on this election cycle, I saw how it worked. And the thing is that we got in our county 75% of the registered voters that were Republicans out to vote, because we did offer the early voting. And they said, well, listen, we work in this job or that job, and we can't take off. And by the time we do take off and get to our polling place from where we work and back, we lose the entire time. We don't have it. So we worked hard to make it work for us. But another thing is that we require that when you do show ID, it must prove that you are an American citizen.
Yeah, and look, the whole thing about early voting and all that, I've never early voted in my entire life until this election. And the reason is because we didn't have a choice. We had to play by their playbook in order to win, so that we have an opportunity to get rid of their playbook and go back to the old way of doing things. I'm not a fan of ballot harvesting either. I think that should be outlawed and banned. But yet in my book, I have every single state's balloting guidelines by Ballotpedia. Why? Because I wanted people to know, this book came out before the election, I wanted people to know that, yes, you can ballot harvest, and we need to do that. But again, now that we are in a situation where we're in power, I want to see all of these changes. I want to get rid of ballot harvesting. I want to get rid of the mail-in ballots and the early voting and all that. We shouldn't have to do that. We should be able to do what we've always done, which is win on election day. Maybe if you have a week of early voting, okay, fine, and it's a universal thing for every state, and that's it. That's fine. But not, what is it, 2 months in North Carolina or something crazy? I mean, it's unbelievable.
No, it should be limited to no more than 14 days. Limited to no more than 14 days. Even that might be too many.
There's a lot of fraud that can happen in 2 weeks. Maybe 7 days, something.
Well, whatever we did here in South Carolina, we kept it clean and clear. Yeah. And I know that our county here was instrumental in revising the voter laws. And when the new laws passed, it was nicknamed after our county. It was actually called the Beaufort County Act.
You guys banned non-citizens from voting, too. You guys amended your constitution.
Yes, we did.
Awesome.
Yes, we did. And what we're working on now is closing the primaries. And that is, we're getting the foot in the door, and we're just going to have to do it baby steps at a time, because again, that's amending the Constitution, which I think in the end will happen. I'm praying within the next 5 years. I've been working on that
Yeah.
for 15, 16 years.
Yeah, and we got to fight against RCV. I'm sorry, we got to get rid of the ranked choice voting in any state. We soundly defeated it here in Arizona, and I think it might have even been repealed in Alaska. And I guess for the next election, they're not going to have it, but this one I think they did, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe someone could correct me on that. But yeah, we cannot allow a voting lottery. That's basically what it was, right? It was basically take the best candidate and dilute their power and give it to some moderate. That's how Sarah Palin didn't win in Alaska. So I think people understand that we've got to stay away from ranked choice voting.
Well, we got just a few minutes left on the clock here. I'm looking at it. And the last thing I wanted to talk about with you, because there's so many topics that are hitting us left and right in the news, but this offer to buy out the federal employees.
Yes.
And give them 8 months, full benefits during the 8 months and so forth, a nice little pension. And yet we've got the unions fighting it and giving the employees the misinformation. But last I heard, as of 3 days ago, 40,000 of the federal employees have already applied. But in the interim, the entire CIA was also offered the buyout too.
Yeah, and that's what I was discussing earlier. It's actually up to 60,000 now.
Oh, great.
And this judge stepped in and put a temporary pause on it until Monday. And that's why I was saying there is already legal precedent for this. Bill Clinton did this and did it actually even bigger in the 1990s. He fired well over, I think, 102,000 federal employees and offered 70,000 federal employees, a bailout or whatever you want to call it, a parachute to get out. And so, again, this has already been done. And the interesting thing is that the prostitutes in the media at that time were praising Bill Clinton, saying, wow, what a bold move and how great it is to cut the government and this and that. Now they want to throw Trump in jail for doing it. It's unbelievable. But I think his
Reagan fired the entire FAA when they went on strike.
Yeah, that's correct.
The statistics are crazy. I mean, the fact that article Mark wrote, he wasn't able to be here with us today, but I thought I had misread it at first. I thought he said that 90% of people from certain federal agencies work in office. I misread it. Only 10%.
10%.
10%
or less.
I think it's even
in
6.
office.
I think it's 6 or
Insane.
something. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But
And
you know
we
what
are
is
paying,
good?
we are paying for those buildings.
And I was just going to bring that up just
water,
now.
We got to pay for the water, the electricity, the whatever, the maintenance.
Shut them down. There's 70% of buildings in Washington, D.C. that are empty or uninhabited at this time. President Trump has noticed it, and he's a real estate developer, and he's talked about selling off those buildings to private owners, which I think is wonderful because not only are you draining the swamp, but now that you've drained the swamp, you got nowhere to fill it back up, right? So it's wonderful. And he's talking about selling those buildings for pennies on the dollar just to get rid of them. And man, if you can eliminate 70% of the buildings in Washington, D.C., Chapter 4 of my book is titled Dismantling Washington, D.C. And so it's really awesome to see that a lot of the things that I talked about in my book are being implemented. But the one thing that I want to kind of stress is that if any other situation other than President Trump, any other president came in and issued, 400 executive orders in 2 weeks, I would be pulling out, what hair I don't have on my head. Okay, because, we don't want to be run by executive fiat. But many years ago, due to gridlock and whatnot in Washington, the legislative branch just punted that responsibility to the executive branch, and the executive branch bastardized the executive orders, which were only used for, naming a post office box in Montana or a federal building in Washington or whatever. They were never supposed to be used in the purpose that they were. So I'm glad that he did it. I understand why he's done it, to undo the damage. But now, how do we make the gains that we've gotten permanent, which is why I titled the book, again, Bold and Brave Solutions to Save America and Create Permanent freedom. We have to figure out now how to take these gains that we've gotten and put them into legislation or ballot initiatives and get them in front of the voters so that we can make sure that we're not in political whack-a-mole where, 4 years from now, a Democrat, God forbid, comes in and undoes everything. And then a Republican comes in and puts it all back, just like we did to Biden and Biden did to Trump. We want to stop that. And I'm not a fan of executive orders. I'd like to see them banned completely after we actually fix the system.
Well, up until 1930, 60% of the revenue collected by local government went directly back into the community. It is now the numbers are completely reversed, and it's maybe less than 30%, if that, goes back into the community. So the vast majority of our money that's paid in taxes goes to feed the federal government. And up until 1930, we were fine. We were from the bottom up. We are now from the top down. And that's why we must reclaim America.
Yep. Amen. And it's just going to continue as they go through each one of these agencies. We haven't seen anything yet. You wait and you watch what's happening next.
I want to see U.S. aid. I want to see that because, I'm sorry, I have a problem with you serving meals to Hamas fighters in Syria.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have problems with you teaching Guatemalans how to be transgenders. I'm sorry. A lot of these programs just go into parties and other things. And, I'm sorry, I forgot about Chelsea Clinton.
Yes. Wade Hubbell's daughter.
84 million she received for her, quote, charity. 10 million went to buy her house. And I think another 3 or 5 million went into her wedding. That's
money laundering.
Wasn't there money going towards like a Pakistani version of Sesame Street too?
Yeah. Well, Hannah, people can find you at fairus.org, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Thank you for stopping in and filling in for CS.
You guys can check me out on Twitter too. It's going to be at Davis___Hannah.
Quite a few underscores there.
And Josh can be found at the jbushow.com along with his book, which you did not send me a signed copy.
Well, you need to get me an address on that, or I could send you a PDF copy. I do have a couple of extra copies that I can send you. You can also go to X at Real JBU Show. Real JBU Show. I just started to come back into social media land in the last probably, 6 weeks or so. And I'm already over 6,000 followers. It's amazing what you can get done when you're not being censored anymore.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you guys, and God bless you. Enjoy your weekend. And we will be back next week.
Anytime, any topic.
I'm praying for this land I love, America, America, the home of the free. But there are people making plans to change America. They've no respect for her or what matters most to me. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Long for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe with God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. Do you hear our battle cry across America? We've got to rescue her. You know it's up to me and you to see the truth behind their lies. Don't change America. God bless America and the red, white, and blue. That's why I stand for the flag for the friends I have loved and lost, and I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. For the friends we have loved and lost, and we still believe in God we trust, in the freedom our forefathers granted us. We know it's not too late to save America. Save America. Let's save America. Together we can save America.